Hey, what's up YouTube? In today's video, I'll be sharing with you how I secure a new AWS account and also to ensure that the free tier services do not get exceeded. In this screen that you see here, I'm actually running a root user. Okay, so the first thing you have to do when you create a new AWS account is to use MFA, which is a multi-factor authentication. I have already set it up some time back. And the next thing we're gonna do is to make sure the new user that I created or the new roles are able to access the billing, because I'm not gonna use root access to view the billing, so it's activated. Next, I'm gonna make sure the free tier alerts are sent to my email. The CloudWatch billing alerts are already activated some time back. Okay, next we're gonna create the CloudTrail logs, because since I'm not going to use root access, I know I need to be alerted if, let's say, someone else got access to my root credentials and they log in, and the CloudTrail API is able to pick it up and send to my email. That way I'll be informed. So this is where we create the CloudTrail logs. I'm going to create a new S3 bucket. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to disable the log file, because the whole idea is I'm gonna disable this log file KMS encryption, because I don't need the CloudTrail logs to be encrypted, and I don't need to ensure that the CloudTrail logs are not tampered. But I do need a CloudWatch logs. I'm gonna get this in, and I do need to create a IAM role for this. Click next. Management data. I don't need the activities to be read. I need it to be written, because if, let's say, someone else has access to my root access, more or less they will create an EC2 to run some mining operation. Okay. Copy your management. Let's create the trail. Okay, so the CloudTrail roles is already exists. Let's make sure everything is working fine. Next, we're gonna set an alarm for it. Let's create an alarm. There's no metric. We're gonna create a metric filter. I'm gonna call this let's copy this. Let's test. This moment there isn't thing for me to test. Create a filter name. Let's use this. Let's call this one. Let's create. Now let's create an alarm for it. Select metric. Then we're gonna give it a day. So what this means is, if, let's say, they're able to detect one occurrence, they will send they will trigger the alarm. So I'm gonna make it 1 or equal, because I'm not gonna take any chances. Then after that, I'm gonna select. Let's see whether we have an SNS creator for this. can we do? Okay, let's click next. What do you call this? Alarm. You can call root activity, root account activity. I'm gonna click next. Okay, in order to make sure that it's working, let's sign out. And I'm back. So let's see whether any alarm get triggered. So I did receive a trigger here. This shows that it's working. Okay, next, what do we do next? Since we're gonna get rid of our root access, we have to create a replacement. So this is my way of creating a replacement for root access. You could use IDP or Azure or OAuth for federated user, but since I'm only using AWS for sandbox, I'll create the user within this account itself. So let's create the user. What I'll do is I'll create the group for it. I'll call it operation. And I already pre-configure a user. I'll call this here. And I've already created a role. What this group does is it gives this user an assume policy so that it allows this user to assume a role in this account. And the role that I've created is this. And the role that I've created for this user is this. And it has administrator access. Okay, so let's get out. Let's get out of here. I already pre-configure the login password in, but for this account I don't use MFA, which is not the best practice. Let's log into this account. I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you what it does. Basically, you log into this account. The good thing about using this approach is if the the credentials get exposed, or you create an access key and somehow it got into the hands of other people, they can't do much with it unless they know the exact role to assume. See, it doesn't even have a Cloud Shell environment. It doesn't even has any policy at all. See? So in order to make full use of this role, this user, you have to switch the role, which I already done here. Let's see. Yeah. Let's switch the role. Let's use this. And I'm able to switch the role like this. In this way, I don't need to use IDP, and in this way, if let's say I create access key and somehow it got exposed, the user cannot do anything unless they know the exact role that gives them access for administrator. So what's next? You can do an account alias, or this is what I'll do. This is my main account, a management account. In order to create new projects, I'm gonna create a new AWS account. I'm not gonna use this management account. So let's go to this organization. I already pre-configure a new AWS account through AWS organization. Okay, then we're gonna do the same here. We're gonna switch role. Gonna switch role to this account. Then okay, I need to Google the AWS organization roles. I'm gonna log out here. So right now we are in a new AWS account. The same thing I'm gonna do to secure this account, which is to create a new user with little or no policy and create a new role for this user to access. We're gonna skip this. So there's no user, we're gonna create a new user. Let's call this about 118. Then I'm gonna create a group. Operations. We're gonna create a group called operations. I'm not gonna assign any policy to this. I'm gonna show you why. So we're gonna add this user to this group. Create the user. Let's create the credential for it. Then to make it easier, I'm gonna make the alias the same. Okay, so 118 is being used. Let's delete this user. Let's create a new user. Let's auto generate. Create this. Next, we're gonna create a role. Give it administrator access. Then after that, I'm gonna follow this. I guess I have already created one. Okay. So just make sure that trust Okay, let me teach you something. When you say this, it means that in order for this user to assume the role, it must have a IAM policy that allows it to assume. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say I'm creating this user, gonna log it in. As you recall, this user doesn't have any policy. I've not given it any IAM policy. So how can it assume a role? It can't. It cannot be done. Because what this means is you can only assume the role if the user has the IAM policy to assume a role. However, you don't have to give the user the IAM policy. What you can do is just make sure this ARN replace this root and update it. See? And all you have to do is just switch role. That's it. Okay, good. So now let's go to the next one. I'll show you something that I do. AWS free tier. So as you can see from this screen, AWS only offers 750 hours for you to run your EC2 within a year. So that means that whichever comes first, either you use up 750 hours worth of running costs, or at the end of the 12 months, regardless of whether you use up the 750 hours, there's no you have to pay already after this. I'm going to show you example of how I configure the alarm, just to make sure that if I use up almost 750 hours, okay, let's turn on this. Let's create an alarm. Let's go to billing. Let's go to budgets. But first, let's go to build preference. Okay. Let's create a budget. Let's customize this. Since I'm only interested in usage, let's choose this. Then I'm gonna call this free tier. Usage type change to. Let's see whether this works. Oh, I see. That is because I've not used the EC2 instance at all, is it? Let's go back to my old account. Okay, so can only conclude that because I've not run any EC2 instance, I cannot get this thing out. So example, what I'll do is I'll set up this, use this, Yep, precisely. So I've not run any process in that new AWS account, and that's why you cannot see this. So I'm gonna do an annual, then expiry, then I'm gonna do a fix. Since AWS offers 150 worth of hours, I'm gonna give it and click next. I'm gonna add an alert threshold if it hits about 80%. Then notification will be the same email here, but I will put in something like this: EC2 exit. Then after that, that's it. I'll create the budget. Okay, as you can see, that new account doesn't have any EC2 running, so that is why we cannot create the budget for it. But since I've demonstrated already, you more or less understand how to create the budget for specific services. And AWS offer a couple of free services. Let's see, free AWS free. Depends on whether you want to. It depends on whether you want to configure it. But as you can see, these are all the services and resources that AWS offer for that 12 months. And I'm only focusing on EC2 instance. Okay, so I hope you understand what I've presented, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll try my best to get back to you. Oh yeah, one more thing. Once you create a new AWS account, you have to ensure that there is some kind of restraint. So when it comes to playing sandbox, I usually don't use more than T2 micro or T3 micro. So this is what I know I can control. However, in the event that this new AWS account got compromised, you can use something called a SCP. So I'm gonna show you something. It's called a service control policy. Let me see. SCP AWS. Yeah, it's a service control policy. So what you can do here is you go to this organization. Then after that, you're gonna create the SCP policy. You're gonna create the SCP, and you're gonna apply this onto the new AWS account. So I'm gonna click this. I already pre-configure an instance constraint. I'm gonna attach this. Oh, it's already attached. So I'll show you what this policy does. Is basically it denies the ability to run an EC2 instance if the specs is not T3 micro or T2 micro. Okay, so this is something extra if you want to do. If not, thanks for watching. Bye.